Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Linda Carter stepped cautiously into the mouth of the canyon, her breath shallow and her pulse racing in her ears. The air here felt different, as if every particle was charged with potential energy. Behind her, the rest of the research team, all seasoned veterans of space exploration, stood staring at the anomaly in awe. It swirled before them like a tear in the fabric of reality, shimmering with hues of violet and gold. "Time itself," whispered Linda, her voice cracking from both fear and excitement. The rift they had stumbled upon during a routine mission on Omega 9 wasn't just a spatial anomaly, it was a window, a gateway, a portal to Earth's past. "Are we really going to do this?" asked Mark, her second-in-command, his face drawn with apprehension. Linda didn't hesitate. "We don't have a choice. The alien threat is real. If we have a chance to change the past and give humanity a fighting chance, we must take it." She paused for a moment, gazing into the swirling void. "I'll go alone. We can't risk more people. You stay here and monitor the rift." The debate among the team had been heated. They knew that if they crossed into the past, their actions could alter the course of human history. But what was the alternative? Letting the impending alien invasion crush Earth as it had done to so many other civilizations? No. Linda had to act. She stepped closer to the rift, the edges of reality seeming to pulse in sync with her heartbeat. As she approached, her surroundings blurred for a moment. Then, with one final glance back at her team, she stepped through. The world that greeted her on the other side was breathtaking. Blue skies stretched endlessly overhead, and the scent of fresh, unspoiled air filled her lungs. She blinked in the brightness, adjusting to the sunlight after spending so much time in the sterile, artificial light of the spaceship. Before her lay a valley, lush and green, dotted with primitive huts. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from small fires, evidence of early human activity. This was Earth, but not the Earth she knew. The year was 5000 BC, a time when humanity was still in its infancy. As Linda walked down the slope, her heart pounded with anticipation. The data they had gathered before entering the rift indicated that the people of this region were on the cusp of transitioning from a nomadic lifestyle to an agrarian society. If she played her cards right, she could accelerate their development, planting the seeds of technology that would one day save them from the alien menace, but she had to be careful. Too much, too fast, and she could disrupt everything. The first people she encountered were cautious. Their language was rudimentary, a mix of gestures and sounds, but Linda had studied enough ancient linguistics to communicate. She held up her hands, palms open, a universal sign of peace. One of the men, tall and muscular with piercing eyes, stepped forward. His clothing was made of animal skins, and a crude stone axe hung from his belt. He eyed Linda warily but did not approach. "I come in peace," Linda said slowly, her voice calm. "I want to help." The man, who would later introduce himself as Chief Rayhan, studied her for a long moment before nodding slightly. He spoke a few words, and though Linda couldn't understand everything, she sensed that he was asking her why she was there. Linda reached into the small pack she had brought with her. She pulled out a metal tool, an agricultural implement designed to help till the soil. As she handed it to Rayhan, his eyes widened in disbelief. Metalwork was far beyond the capabilities of his people, but he recognized its value immediately. "This will help your people," Linda said, hoping her actions would speak louder than words. "I can teach you more." Rayhan's gaze softened, but before he could respond, an elderly man stepped forward, his eyes filled with suspicion. This was Tama, the tribe's spiritual leader. His distrust of Linda was palpable. He muttered something in Rayhan's ear, and the chief's face hardened once more. Linda knew that winning over Rayhan was only part of the battle. She would have to convince the entire tribe, including Tama, if her plan was to succeed. Over the next few days, Linda worked tirelessly to integrate herself into the tribe. She taught them how to use the tools she had brought, showing them more efficient ways to farm, how to smelt simple metals, and the basics of written communication. Rayhan and many of the younger members of the tribe were eager to learn, but Tama remained a constant obstacle. He saw Linda's influence as unnatural, a disruption of the order the gods had established. One night, as Linda sat by the fire, watching the stars, Tama approached her. His weathered face was stern, but there was a glimmer of curiosity in his eyes. "You bring power," he said in halting speech. "But why?" Linda hesitated. She couldn't explain the full truth. How could she tell him that she was from the future, here to change the course of history? Instead, she said, "Your people are strong, but there are dangers coming. I can help you prepare." Tama stared at her for a long moment before turning away. His response was cryptic: "Change comes slowly, or it brings chaos." As the weeks passed, the tribe flourished. Crops grew faster, tools became more refined, and Linda could see the subtle shifts in their society. But she also noticed something else. Time itself seemed to be resisting her presence. At first, it was small things, objects misplaced, conversations repeated. But soon, Linda's memories began to fade, details of the future slipping away as if the timeline were rewriting itself around her. She knew she couldn't stay in the past much longer. Every day she remained, the more unstable her connection to the future became. But just as Linda began planning her return, the unthinkable happened. The aliens had discovered her plan. The first sign of trouble came when the sky lit up with a flash of light. Linda looked up, her heart sinking as she recognized the unmistakable glow of an alien transport pod entering the atmosphere. They had come to stop her. She rushed to Rayhan's side, explaining in hurried, broken sentences that danger was coming. At first, he didn't understand, but when the alien ship landed in the valley, its metallic hull gleaming in the sunlight, realization dawned. The aliens emerged, their tall, slender forms almost humanoid but with an eerie, otherworldly grace. They moved silently, their weapons glowing with energy. The tribe, armed only with primitive spears and axes, stood no chance, but Linda wasn't about to let them die. "Get everyone to the caves," she shouted to Rayhan, who immediately began barking orders. The tribe scattered, heading for the safety of the nearby hills. Linda knew that their only hope was to use the technology she had introduced to outsmart the aliens. She had no weapons capable of matching the aliens' advanced firepower, but she had something else: ingenuity. She and Rayhan set traps throughout the valley, using the terrain to their advantage. Pits were dug, covered with leaves, and crude explosives, made from the early chemistry she had taught them, were rigged to detonate when triggered. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. When the aliens finally advanced, they were met with fierce resistance. Though the tribe's weapons were primitive, their tactics were clever, and the element of surprise was on their side. One by one, the aliens fell into the traps, their sleek bodies crumpling as explosions rocked the valley. But the battle was far from over. Linda found herself face to face with one of the alien leaders, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It spoke in a language she couldn't understand, but the menace in its tone was clear. With a swift motion, it raised its weapon, aiming directly at her. Time seemed to slow. Linda's mind raced. She had one chance, just one. She lunged toward the alien, grabbing a crude explosive from her belt and throwing it at its feet. The blast sent her flying backward, her ears ringing as she hit the ground. When she looked up, the alien was gone, its body disintegrated by the explosion. She lay there, gasping for breath, as the valley fell silent. The battle was won, but the cost was great. Many of the tribe had been injured, and the valley was scarred from the explosions. Linda knew she had to leave before the timeline unraveled completely. As she stood before the rift, preparing to step back into her own time, Rayhan approached her. His face was solemn, but there was a new understanding in his eyes. "You have given us much," he said quietly. "But we will carry the burden of this knowledge." Linda nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She had changed history, but at what cost? Would the future she returned to be better, or worse? There was no way to know. With one last glance at the valley, she stepped through the rift. When Linda emerged on the other side, everything was different. The Earth she had known was gone, replaced by a world far more advanced than she had ever imagined. Humanity had flourished, not just surviving but thriving. The technology she had introduced in the past had grown over millennia, creating a civilization that spanned the stars, and yet, Linda felt a deep unease. She had done what she thought was right, but the weight of her actions pressed heavily on her soul. As she gazed up at the night sky, filled with distant stars and alien worlds, she couldn't help but wonder, had she truly saved humanity, or had she unleashed something far worse? Linda's footsteps echoed faintly as she walked through the sterile corridors of the research facility. Everything felt strange, as though the world had shifted just slightly off balance. She had returned, but it wasn't the future she had left. There were no welcoming faces from her team, no congratulations on a successful mission. Instead, an eerie silence permeated the space. The advanced Earth she had glimpsed upon returning through the time rift was nothing like what she remembered. Buildings soared higher, gleaming with unfamiliar technology. Transport ships hovered silently in the distance, their sleek designs far more advanced than anything she had seen before. Yet, despite the awe-inspiring progress, Linda felt disconnected, like she didn't belong in this timeline anymore. She wandered the hallways of the facility, her mind racing with questions. What had changed? How much of history had been altered by her actions in the past? Would this future recognize her at all? As she approached the central control room, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, scientists moved quickly, their focus sharp and intent on screens filled with data. She stepped in cautiously, hoping to find a familiar face, but it was clear that no one recognized her. Linda wasn't part of this world anymore, at least not in the way she had been before. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice hesitant but firm. One of the technicians, a young man with a visor over his eyes, glanced up. "Can I help you?" he asked, polite but distant. Linda cleared her throat. "I'm Dr. Linda Carter. I just returned from the Time Rift mission. I need to speak to someone in charge." The young man blinked, confusion flickering across his face. "Time Rift mission?" He turned to one of his colleagues. "Do we have anything in the records about a time rift?" The second scientist, an older woman with silver streaks in her hair, shook her head. "Nothing recent. That program was discontinued, over a century ago?" A cold dread washed over Linda. "What do you mean discontinued?" "I was just there. I stepped through the rift, into the past, and returned minutes ago." The older woman studied Linda for a moment before responding. "The last recorded use of the Time Rift project was 147 years ago. According to our data, the experiment was deemed too dangerous and unpredictable. The facility has been operational since, but the rift itself has been unstable and inaccessible since then." Linda's breath caught in her throat. 147 years. It couldn't be. She had only been gone for a few weeks, maybe months at most. The rift must have somehow propelled her far into the future beyond what she had intended. I didn't mean to be gone that long, Linda muttered, feeling the weight of the years pressing down on her. I thought I'd be back much sooner. The two scientists exchanged uneasy glances before the younger one spoke again. Maybe you should talk to Director Avellini. She's in charge of historical anomalies. She might have more insight into what happened with the rift. Nodding, Linda followed the directions they gave her, making her way deeper into the facility. Every step felt heavier, as if the very air around her was trying to pull her back into the past. Her thoughts kept circling the same questions. Had she really done the right thing? What had her actions in the ancient world set in motion over the centuries? When she reached Director Avellini's office, Linda hesitated for a moment. What if this woman confirmed her worst fears? What if the future she had helped create was not the utopia she had envisioned but something darker, more twisted? Taking a deep breath, Linda knocked and stepped inside. Director Avellini was an imposing figure, tall and regal, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail. She looked up from her desk, her expression neutral as Linda entered. Dr. Carter, I presume, Avellini said, her voice calm but firm. I've been briefed on your situation. Linda nodded, unsure where to begin. I didn't expect to be gone so long. The rift has been highly unpredictable for as long as we've known about it, Avellini interrupted, standing up and walking around her desk. The fact that you returned at all is remarkable, considering the instability. You're lucky, in a way. Lucky? Linda couldn't help but feel a hint of bitterness. I've been gone for almost 150 years, and the world I came back to is completely alien. Avellini smiled slightly. Perhaps not as alien as you think, Dr. Carter. You see, your actions in the past didn't just vanish. They rippled through time. The advancements you introduced to early humans laid the foundation for many of the technologies we now take for granted. Linda swallowed hard. So it worked? Yes and no, Avellini said, her expression turning serious. You succeeded in accelerating human progress, but with that progress came complications. The alien threat you were trying to prepare humanity for? It arrived much sooner than anticipated, and Earth barely survived the first wave of attacks. Linda felt a knot tightening in her stomach. How bad was it? Avellini sighed. Bad enough that billions were lost in the initial conflict. We had the technology to fight back, yes, but we lacked the unity and foresight to avoid the devastation. Your influence on the past created a technologically advanced society, but one that was fractured, divided by ambition and power. The war against the aliens nearly destroyed us. Linda's mind raced. She had come back to prepare humanity, to give them a fighting chance, but had she inadvertently sown the seeds of their own destruction? Avellini continued, her voice more measured now. The war reshaped humanity. After the initial devastation, we rebuilt, stronger and more united. That's the future you see now. A future forged in the crucible of war, where survival meant adapting, evolving, and expanding beyond Earth. We're part of the Galactic Alliance now, not just because of our strength, but because of our resilience. Linda stared out the window, taking in the gleaming cityscape in the distance. Advanced ships floated effortlessly above the skyline, and the people moved with a sense of purpose and calm. They had survived. But at what cost? I never wanted this, Linda said softly. I wanted to help, not cause more suffering. Avellini's gaze softened. You couldn't have known the full extent of what would happen. Time is a delicate thing, and even the smallest changes can create waves. What matters now is that you're here, in this future, and you can help us continue moving forward. Linda felt a sense of hopelessness creeping in. How can I help now? I'm over a century behind. Everything I knew is gone. Avellini smiled, a hint of optimism in her eyes. Not everything. You're still one of the brightest minds in the field of temporal science. We've made advancements, yes, but understanding the rift, understanding how to move through time and space without disrupting the balance, that's something we've yet to perfect. With your experience, you could be invaluable to us. For the first time since she returned, Linda felt a spark of hope. Perhaps her journey through time wasn't over. Perhaps she could still make a difference, even in this future that felt so foreign to her. But as she stood there, contemplating her next steps, the faint memory of the alien leader she had fought in the past resurfaced in her mind. Something about its final words, or the way it had looked at her, lingered, a warning she couldn't shake. The battle had been won, but Linda couldn't help but feel that the war was far from over. Dr. Carter, Avellini said, pulling Linda from her thoughts, the time rift may be unstable, but if we can stabilize it, we could unlock the secrets of time itself. You've already proven that humanity can adapt, can evolve. Now, let's see what else we can do. Linda nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. I'll help. But this time, we need to be careful. No more reckless leaps. If we're going to use the rift again, we need to understand it completely. Avellini smiled. Agreed. As Linda looked out at the world she had helped create, she realized that while the past was behind her, the future was still unwritten. And this time, she would make sure humanity was truly ready for whatever came next.